Tampa by Alissa Nutting. So you may have heard of this book. It has quite the controversial reputation. And after having read it, I can safely say that reputation is well earned. This book is by a very, very, very large margin. I'm talking like a country mile. The most explicit thing in a sexual sense that I have ever read in my life. This book is not erotica. Oh no, this is porn right here. Raw, insanely graphic pornography. And the book being like that and the author's surname being Nutting, the stars aligned. They really did. The stars aligned when it came to the publication of this book. And I don't know how well this camera will pick up on this author photograph right here in the opening of the book, but I'm talking woof. Aptly named author, I would say. But all joking aside, I also want to commend this book for its cover design, because the cover design on this book is chef's kiss. You know, I looked trying to find if it said cover design by whoever. Couldn't find anything, but whoever you are out there who designed the cover for this book, I tip my hat to you, because this has probably the greatest cover of any book I've ever read. But what is Tampa actually about? Well, this is the story of illicit relations between teacher and pupil. It is loosely inspired by the real life case of Deborah LaFave, who was, I believe, a Tampa, Florida school teacher who engaged sexually with one of her students and was subsequently caught and busted for it. Now, in this book, the book is narrated by Celeste Price. She is a young, impossibly attractive school teacher who is entering her first year of teaching, but she's not there to teach those kids. Oh no, she's there to bed those kids. She is a nymphomaniacal hebephile and also a cold-blooded psychopath, as it is revealed as the book goes on. And she wants to get into the pants of some 14-year-old boys, and she's very specific. It has to be 14-year-old boys, because that's just how she gets her rocks off. So she's married to a cop named Ford, who is the dumbest cop in the world, I think. And she starts teaching, and then she sets her sights on a student named Jack, and then she grooms him into a sexual partner, and then they have lots and lots of ridiculously explicit sex, and then some things happen. His dad dies of a heart attack after catching them banging, and then she eventually has to move on to another boy, and her sexual appetite in this is just downright insatiable. And then eventually it all comes crashing down, and there's a big media trial, and she sort of gets her comeuppance. That's the broad overview of the plot. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this book. Let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses, the inner workings of the book. So the writing in this book is pretty good. This book, I've seen it kind of described as like Lolita in reverse, a gender swapped Lolita. And I can see that, because this book does succeed in the same way, sort of, that Lolita succeeds in placing you inside the mind of a person who is incredibly despicable, but making you kind of, guiltily like that character a little bit. And the writing is pretty strong. It's nowhere near Lolita level strong, but Miss Nutting can turn a good phrase, craft a good sentence. So overall, the writing is pretty strong, and it's very witty and kind of a pitch black comedy kind of way. A lot of the similes that she makes in this are pretty sharp, actually. I can't really describe them because so many of them involve the narrator's genitalia, but there is some real comedy in this, just like there is in Lolita. So it kind of hits some of the same beats. However, the editing in this book is another matter. And so on the acknowledgments page, Miss Nutting expresses thanks to my genius editor, Lee Boudreau. And I bring that name up because Lee Boudreau, you didn't do the greatest job editing this book. So there's at least one like contextual mistake in this book. On one page, the main character, the narrator's car is a Corvette, and then a few pages later, her car is a Camaro. That's a mistake that really should have been ironed out in the editing. And also, there are occasional problems with the tense of the writing, I think. So the book is narrated in first person, past tense, like Celeste is telling the story or writing the story after the fact. But there are instances in the book where it dips into present tense, and that was a mistake, I think. I don't think that really benefited the story at all. I think it kind of that should have been ironed out. So the writing overall is good. She has good prose. It's pretty commendable, but the editing could have been stronger in this. Now let's talk about the characters. So the character, at least of Celeste, who is the narrator, and as I've said before, when you write a book in first person, you kind of get a pass because that's really the only person, the narrator, in the book that has to be rounded and developed. And she's definitely a memorable character, if only because of how lascivious she is. But she's not really that interesting of a character. And this is leads me into an aspect of the book that I didn't really anticipate. And maybe it was me expecting something different out of this book when I went into it. I mean, I knew it was going to be raw. I knew it was going to be, you know, leaning into porn pretty hard, but I thought it was going to be something different than what it ended up being. I thought it was going to be more than that. So, Celeste Price in this book is a hebephile. She is just, slobbering at the mouth after young boys. She's not sexually attracted to grown men or even older adolescent boys. They have to be 14 years old. That's pretty specific age range. But she is also nymphomaniacal. Oh, yes, she has an unquenchable libido. And also, as the book progresses and we see the lengths that she'll go to in the name of self preservation, you also realize that she is a complete psychopath, too, that is very cold and kind of soulless. And that's it. It's definitely a unique voice for the book to be narrated with. It makes for a pretty unique character, but it doesn't necessarily make for the most interesting character. And that's because there isn't really any conflict within her. So I thought this book was going to be like a Mary Kay Letourneau type intense psychological drama about a woman giving in to her kind of more illicit desires and knowing those desires are wrong and frowned upon, but having to wrestle with herself and eventually succumbing to temptation. I thought that's what this book was going to be like, but no, there's no internal conflict. There's no wrestling with temptation. It's just porn from page one, and it's entertaining. Oh, it's damn sure entertaining in a very lurid way, but I think it could have been more interesting psychologically if the character hadn't been so just rabidly, nymphomaniacal and, had actually had some kind of inner turmoil about what she's doing. I think it could have been a little bit more interesting. Like this book it goes for shock and awe kind of. It goes for, kind of just, in your face, just incredibly graphic sex scenes, but it doesn't really, again, dwell so much on any kind of conflict. There really isn't any conflict to the main character, and so she really wasn't that interesting to me after the shock of just the kind of just how porn this book goes wears off. You're kind of left with a rather flat, very one note character. Um, and also, that brings me to another aspect of this book that I'd like to touch upon is that I'm not sure that this book really resembles real life. as much as it would like you to think it does. So the whole shtick of this book is that it's meant to be an exploration, a very, you know, real world issue of, teachers, specifically female teachers, occasionally indulging in carnal relations with male students. And, that's definitely something that's worthy of conversation and discussion and exploration because, again, you see it on the news, fairly often something like that happens. But I don't think this book really resembles those situations very much because I don't think the majority of the women who do that are really what you would describe as like predators. I think that kind of thing happens more situationally, circumstantially. Maybe Miss Teacher has a bad marriage at home, or maybe there's some kind of sexual dysfunction there. Also, you're working day in and day out around males who are in the flower of youth, often very fit, often very athletic and attractive. And you give in and you do something that you shouldn't do, but you make a mistake. And I'm not at all trying to write that off and like dismiss it. I'm just saying that I don't think that the majority of the female teachers who do that kind of thing in any way resemble the character in this book because she is like almost cartoonish in her appetites. She really is. It reaches a level of kind of almost self parody at times where it really feels like it devolves basically just to porn. And at the end of the book, whenever she's caught, and it's a big media circus, and she becomes a celebrity of notoriety because of her actions, it does have some kind of commentary in that about the pretty privilege, the privilege of beauty, and how attractive women, often get off scot free. Because in the real life case, the real life trial of Deborah LaFave, her defense attorney argued that she was too pretty to go to prison, and that's lifted directly into this book. And that defense actually worked. And so it really does highlight some important issues at the end of the book about kind of the double standards here, especially in regards to how this topic is treated from both the difference from the male and female perspective when it comes to this kind of thing. So it does have something to say, but I think it could have said more, and I think it could have been more interesting if it had not just gone for the shock and awe like it did. If it had actually tried to be like a psychological drama, I think it could have got more miles out of its premise that way. That's how I would have written it, with maybe a little bit more restraint and maybe a little bit more, inner conflict in the main character. So I feel like this book, while I did enjoy this book guiltily, I do think it had some missed opportunities to it. I think some aspects of it could have been done a little bit differently. But overall, to rate Tampa by Alyssa Nutting, I'm going to give this book a B plus. The narrator of the book is certainly unique. It's certainly a unique voice that you probably won't soon forget. But her character is very one note and not particularly interesting internally. And the writing is good, although the editing, again, there's at least one mistake in there contextually, and also the tense of the writing occasionally does something that I don't think it should have. So overall, I give Tampa a B plus. So Tampa by Alyssa Nutting. Have you read Tampa? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. And if you have not read Tampa, I'm not going to recommend this book because it is not going to be for everyone. Like when I say this book is raw, y'all, I mean it's raw. Like it goes there. It is, again, the most explicit thing I've ever read. And, not everybody's going to like that. But if you're in the mood for something incredibly lurid, incredibly salacious, Uh, you might want to give this a go, but if you're not down with that kind of thing, you might want to pass this one by. But as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.